I found a video of a Christian talking about atheism, which I know is such a new topic for me to cover on this channel, but this sermon is entitled, "Why I Am Not an Atheist." But first things first, he has a totally different definition of atheism than I do.
And so I want to define it for you very quickly. Atheism, here's their creed. In the entire universe, there has never been in the past, there is not now in the present, and there will never be in the future any god, gods, or goddesses of any size, shape, or description. That's the atheist creed.
And where do you think he got this from? I tried to search this exact quote, and it only seems to come from a Christian source or two. See, atheists themselves tend to consider atheism to simply be a lack of a belief in God. And this is different from the affirmation of the idea that God does not exist, in that if you don't know whether or not a God exists, and you still don't believe in him, as per my definition, you are an atheist. But, granted, I do affirm that the Abrahamic God, at least as literally written down in the Torah, Tanakh, and Bible, does not exist. So perhaps I should give evidence for that, and I would point to several things in the Bible that we have direct disproof of, like the idea that the entire world flooded over. We have evidence against that in the form of geologic columns. See, if the entire world flooded over, we would expect to see one huge layer that we don't see. Also, the biblical age of the earth, about 6,000 years or so, has also been disproven with various methods, including radiometric dating. And I would also point to things in the Bible that we should have proof of, but we simply don't. Like the idea that ancient Israelites were ever in ancient Egypt, which is a pretty big part of the Torah, or the existence of a Leviathan, or giants. And I could also question other things and point out inconsistencies within the Bible.
Atheist. A being a negative, no. Theist being God. No God, no where, no time. According to the laws of logic, and this is very important, this statement, atheism itself, its very name, is a universal negative. The declaration that there is no God is a universal negative. Now, according to the laws of logic, it is impossible to prove a universal negative. So when an atheist makes the assertion there is no God anywhere at any time, he is making a universal negative which he cannot prove. And since he cannot prove or demonstrate his assertion, he is being, by his own definition, irrational.
Okay, first of all, you can prove a universal negative. For example, you can prove that no triangle has 4 sides, just by definitions. But I will concede that I have absolutely no idea whether or not there is, say, a deistic God, so I'm not going to pretend like I know. But I also don't believe in him. However, that changes when you believe in a God who had some sort of influence on the world in a physical way that we should be able to see. Because we don't see that. And because I see no indication that there is a God, I don't believe in any God, and thereby I am an atheist. However, if we are given absolutely no indication that there is a God, it is more reasonable to believe that there is none than to believe that there is.
I don't need to know all things in all times and all places. All I need to know is what God has done for me. And you can't argue with me because you weren't there when he changed me, when he sanctified me, when he took a wretched sinner like me and redeemed me and washed me in his blood and did something atheism could never do, give me purpose. You weren't there.
Bitch, watch me. What you just described there is merely a psychological experience, probably emotional in nature, right? This sort of thing is not exclusive to Christianity. Muslims feel it, Hindus feel it, Buddhists feel it. So even though I know it's convincing for you because you genuinely felt something, is it more reasonable that that is emotional and superstitious in nature, or is it more reasonable to believe that there's an ethereal dictator who does it?
You see, in the past century, the 20th century, it is known as the deadliest century, and it is also coincidentally known as the atheist century.
Well, a simple Google search for the term Atheist Century doesn't show a goddamn thing, so I don't know where you're getting this from. But yeah, the world wars were a pretty big deal. What does that have to do with the rationality of atheism?
More people died in the 20th century as atheism gave birth to Marx and Stalin and Hitler and Mao and Darwin. We saw more people murdered by these men than in the entire 19 centuries previous.
Okay, first of all, Charles Darwin lived in the 19th century, and he didn't kill a single person. Second of all, Hitler was not an atheist, as I talked about in this video. But granted, there were atheist leaders who did commit atrocities. But maybe there's other factors, like the fact that this was state atheism in particular, or the fact that the world wars had causes that were political in nature, not necessarily religious. But that also ignores the fact that since the end of World War II, we've lived in the most peaceful time that we've ever seen, despite the fact that the number of atheists, or at least the number of people who are unaffiliated with a religion, has increased.
You can look at the fruit of any worldview by finding the state, by finding the government that holds it true. And so if you want to see the fruit of Islam, all you have to do is you can go to Saudi Arabia or Iran, and you can see what Islam is really about whenever a government says this is true, this is right, this is what's acceptable. You can find out the fruit of Hinduism if you would like. You can go to India and find them starving by the multiplied millions. If you want to know the fruit of atheism, go to China and see the results of it there. If you want to know the fruit of Christianity, you can see it budding at the beginning of the United States of America and in the revivals and the Reformation of Europe as freedom swept across the entirety of the world.
Right, because the most popular religion within a country is the only socioeconomic factor that exists at all. After all, it's not like overpopulation affects a country at all. It's not like a country needs adequate agriculture or needs enough to sustain an economy. No, if every country was simply majority Christian, then we'd all be developed. And this is despite the fact that most every country, including our own, is a secular country, whose government is not established by the means of any sort of religion. I mean, you sort of have a point with Islam, because Islam is meant to establish a system of government, but even those majority Muslim countries aren't necessarily 100% based in Sharia law.
However, the atheist, which brings me to my next point, why I'm not an atheist. Because an atheist has no basis for morality. So the reason why I'm not an atheist is because there is no basis for morality in atheism. The best they can say when they see what's happening around the world is they can say, well, we understand as atheists that we're intelligent people, that in order to get along as a society, we have to be good to one another, and you can't steal and kill and do these things. So we, in order to get along, we have to be good. And I've met people who said, yes, there needs to be peace in the world, and we should all get along. I just get along better when you're dead. What do you say? You have no basis to say anything except to say it is impractical.
Or perhaps I could say that I am not a psychopath. Practicality is not the sole explanation we have for morality. See, morality is kind of like an emotion. It's intuitive. It's instinctive. Only very few people don't have sympathy, empathy, and morality. And those people are called psychopaths, or sociopaths, depending on your definition. See, when we comprehend that another being is being harmed, we have sympathy and empathy, and because of that, we don't want to see or hear about another being being harmed, so we avoid harming other beings. This does not require a God.
I am not an atheist, not simply because there is no basis for morality. I am not an atheist because there's no basis for moral outrage if you are an atheist. What a shame it is. What introspection it should require to every atheist when they are faced with an atrocity or a Holocaust, and the best they can say is, it's impractical. when you know it is not impractical, it's evil.
We don't know that it's evil. We just know that it's bad because we know that people are being harmed, and we know that we don't want people to be harmed. This is an emotional or intuitive response.
And so the very sense of moral outrage that you possess, the very sense of wrong that rises, righteous indignation that rises in your heart, is proof that there must be a moral law that exists, that is surpassing all cultures and all people. No matter where you go, rape is wrong. No matter where you go, murder is wrong. Where does this overarching standard come from?
Look, of course I would say that rape and murder is wrong for everyone. But obviously, there are people who don't consider that to be true, because there are people who rape and there are people who murder. So they don't consider rape or murder to be wrong. And just because I believe it strongly doesn't mean that everybody in the world agrees with me. But let's just ignore the parts of the Bible where Yahweh tells the Israelites to rape and murder other tribes, because that's not convenient.
If this is natural selection, if it is only the strong survive, why wouldn't it be okay? What is to stop me from breaking into your house and stealing those things and destroying those things that matter to you?
An intuitive and instinctive moral judgment. It doesn't require a God. It just requires you not to be a psychopath.
You know it in your heart. You possess that knowledge. You've just so clouded it and covered it over because you want to live how you want to live.
This is the argument that I absolutely hate the most. See, the Christian here is assuming not only what I believe, but why I believe it. See, the argument usually goes that everybody believes in God because it's obvious, and atheists just suppress the truth in unrighteousness. But this is not the case. These people cannot fathom that atheists have genuine, rational reasons not to believe in a God. And for them to say that we really do believe in God is very convenient for them. But you know what? There was this one part in the Bible where it says that it is a shame for men to have long hair. And you know what? I just couldn't have none of that, so I'm an atheist now. The one thing I hate the most is when people assume how other people think or feel, especially without their input. But that's going to be it for this video. Now, there should be enough sermon left for one more video on him, so stay tuned for that, I guess. But at any rate, goodbye.
And if you find yourself in a position where you claim to be an atheist, before you leave here today, and before this is over today, you will no longer be an atheist. I'm making that guarantee. I'm making that promise. If you will hang in here with me, if you watch me right here live on Facebook or streaming through our website, if you'll just stay here with me by the time I'm done, you will not be an atheist.